Hi everyone, Carter Krishner here from Beyond the 90. I wanted to talk a little bit about the USL Players Association and their protests tonight taking place during US Open Cup matches. Before that, I want to take a moment of personal privilege to mention in several of the videos the last few months, but particularly the last few weeks, when I've taped with this backdrop, you've seen one of my beautiful cats, Daisy, walking there and chomping on that plant. So she's now terminally ill. And it started Saturday night when I got back from the Fort Lauderdale-Jacksonville match, USL Super League, and she's now undergoing kidney failure. So I'm not all there, and she's a cat I'm very attached to, and she's been very attached to me. So it's a difficult trauma for my family, for myself, my wife, and my niece. And ironically enough, I went to a press conference in Jacksonville when they announced their men's coach back in November, Sporting Jacks. And then I got back, and the next day, one of my other cats passed away suddenly. Had a respiratory event. He was perfectly fine in the morning, and then he passed away. And so we had taken Daisy to the doctor. I was thinking of taking her emergency at midnight. In fact, I was on the phone with our Jonathan Starling, my colleague, Beyond the 90, coming because of course he covers Jacksonville, I cover Fort Lauderdale, so we need to compare notes about it and publish our post-match piece. And I got off the phone with him when he had to hang up, and then it was 10 minutes later, Daisy started screaming, and screams like I'd never heard from her before. And she's only 9, and she's going through kidney failure, and she's never had health problems before. So thought about rushing her to the doctor, then did not. Rushed her yesterday morning. They did tests, and so just keep us in your thoughts, and I really appreciate that, and particularly my cat. I love that cat. So hard time for me because of that. But I wanted to talk specifically about the players' protest during Open Cup tonight on Tuesday night, and then I'm sure it'll continue on Wednesday. And this is interesting to me because I made my commentary about U.S. soccer through the years about their lack of involvement and lack of being kind of a partner and facilitating best practices and that sort of stuff in the professional game, that they seem to be more of an obstacle to professional leagues than they are a partner in growing the game. And so this protest hit home with me in that sense. Now, I'm not sure U.S. soccer has necessarily the legal authority to do some of these things. Let me explain that. I think that you could argue if they start meddling in terms of player standards specifically, some player standards, that those could be construed as restrictions on fair competition, antitrust violations potentially. And we know they have been sued for antitrust. They've been sued for potential or alleged antitrust violations in the past. So, but the two nationally televised games on CBS related networks, the Vermont Green Portland Heart of Pine game on CBS Sports Network, and then the Indy 11 Des Moines Menace game match on CBS Golazzo Network. You had both matches, players wearing the shirts which said, do you stand with the players, USSF, stand up for standards? My colleague Jonathan Starling, aforementioned colleague Jonathan Starling, has already penned a piece on this. He has his opinion. I have mine as well, but let me first read the USSF statement, which said, the USL Players Association statement, which says, players in the USL are proud to contribute to the growth of the professional soccer in communities across the country. But for decades, the system governing our league has prioritized expansion, markets, and infrastructure while leaving the day-to-day professional standards for players unresolved. So that first part I tend to agree with. I think that the USSF has been obsessed with business metrics, to steal Don Garber's term, in terms of professional standards. Let's take the next paragraph. The United States Soccer Federation sanctions the professional leagues in this country and sets the standards that define them. We believe those standards must include the players whose work makes the professional game possible. Agreed to an extent. Again, I think there might be some legal implications, some issues with how deep how deep you codify those things. During select matches at the US Open Cup, players will wear a message directed at the Federation asking a simple question: do you stand with the players? Now, I think that's important because US soccer, the sport is about the players. US soccer needs to stand with players, player welfare, player health, player standards. But the question is, how much do you codify that? That's a whole different ball of wax. Professional soccer should come with professional standards. Players are asking the governing body of the sport to recognize its responsibility in ensuring those standards exist in practice, not just in theory. Okay, I agree with that in principle, but I also say part of this is USSF has to become a partner with USL, not just a governing body that tries to put their finger on the scales at times, mostly in favor of NWSL or in favor of MLS, but an actual partner that can facilitate the growth of professional leagues. And when you talk about facilitating the growth of professional leagues, the growth of the game in smaller communities, the growth of grassroots soccer, the growth of just the kind of scale of soccer, which is what USL is doing because they're going into markets for the most part that MLS would not be in, then US soccer benefits directly. So they should be facilitating a conversation with the league HQ, with club owners, with the players, with technical staffs. They should be partners in this instead of being an absentee landlord. I've used that term over and over again. They have been an absentee landlord, and that I believe needs to change. And yeah, that's about it. So I was not totally caught off guard by this. I felt like, okay, potentially the players would do something in the space because they had decided to play Open Cup. They had decided not to create this pressure point of potentially fans turning against them because USL championship clubs would have to forfeit Open Cup matches. But they did take a stand, which was very, very interesting in the sense that they used the nationally televised games to send a message directly to US Soccer. And this wasn't about USL HQ anymore. This was about USL Soccer. And I think one other thing to point out that's really important is that this protest now involved USL League 2 and USL League 1 clubs when you bring in Portland Heart of Pines and Vermont Green and Des Moines Menace. So there is solidarity among players and among professional athletes. And I'm telling you, there's solidarity among other professional athletes and other sports behind the USL Players Association and what's going on. There is solidarity among professional athletes and professional players in the USL ecosystem with the USL Championship players. So if USL HQ thought, hey, maybe the USL League One players don't care, that's not the case. So this is another kind of paradigm opening, another window opening in terms of where this goes from here. So I will, Jonathan Sterling has his article up. I will hopefully be back to review some of this. Daniel Forrestine will do his Open Cup reviews. Hopefully I'll be back in a day or two to talk, to give further updates. As I said, this situation with Daisy has just, I mean, those of you who've watched the videos probably noticed she was perfectly healthy and perfectly lively. She may have eaten a toxin, is what the doctor's theorizing somewhere. And so, oh yeah, and I should say the option is to do dialysis, which is going to be very hard on a 9-year-old cat, and spend $25,000 or just kind of let it go. So that decision has basically been made. I want to get a second opinion before we let go of her. So I'm going to try and do that tomorrow and then give her, if she has a few days left before the inevitable event. But yeah, please keep us in your thoughts, and hopefully I will be back in the next day or two to discuss this more. But in the meantime, Jonathan Starling has a column. Daniel Forrestine will have full Open Cup coverage. Thank you once again for your patronage to Beyond the 90. I really appreciate it. We've become, during this USL labor dispute, I feel like we've become more of a community, which we always needed to be, quite honestly. So thank you.